Hey MennoNerds, this is Deborah, and today I want to talk about the ways that our theology inadvertently affects others around us, whether that be positively or negatively. So I want to pick up on what Michael recently shared in one of his latest vlogs. And he was talking about how a lot of people in our society, speaking of from the Western view, because I can't speak for all cultures, are rather relativistic. So we'll say something like, well, this works for me, so even if you disagree, you just have to respect my viewpoints. Now, in a way, that makes complete sense, because other people are entitled to their own opinions. However, when it comes to theology, we really walk a fine line, and here's why. Because, like Michael said, it's actually impossible to be a universalist. Just because I say that something is true for me doesn't necessarily mean it's true. For example, right now it's October. Now, October in Canada, or in most parts of Canada anyway, is when we're experiencing the fall, which means that our terrible winter is about to come and it's going to be minus 20. So let's say you were to say to yourself, well, I don't actually believe that winter's coming. I'm just going to say that it's still summer. That doesn't mean that it's no longer winter. If you fail to put on snow tires on your car, if you fail to buy yourself a nice warm coat, if you fail to buy yourself a sweater, if you continue to wear your t-shirts and shorts, I'm sorry, you're probably going to freeze to death. And you might think, oh, that just affects me. That doesn't affect other people. Actually, it does, because your life is interwoven to so many other people. If you were to freeze to death because of, no offense, but your own stupidity, that means that your parents, your brothers and sisters, your friends, they're going to suffer as well. Now, this is just a completely random example, and you might think this is silly, but this is what people do all the time with the Christian faith. A lot of people are afraid to evangelize because they say, I don't want to offend someone. And being a typical Canadian, I get it, because I don't like offending people. You know, I think Canadians, we apologize at least 25, 30 times a day for things that we don't actually have to be sorry for. But it really goes beyond us. You know, there are lives at stake here. Now, I was recently thinking about this in terms of my work with people who have disabilities. Now, I know that this is kind of, I don't want to say a niche market, but it's a quite unique field. Not everyone is involved in disability ministry. But I think in a lot of ways, all of us, our lives will intersect or touch at some point or another with someone who is marginalized. Now, our churches historically have not always done a good job with engaging with people who are on the margins, whether that's because they're a visible minority, whether that's because they have a disability, whether physical or mental or intellectual, or because they have an addiction, or because of their past backgrounds. And I never really thought about this until I went to a conference in Belfast on disability theology, and the presenter was talking about how she has 2 children, and they're both adults now. They're around my age, so let's say 25 to 30-ish, and one of the daughters has completely rejected the church. Now, this girl actually has Down syndrome. And apparently, when she was growing up, no one took that time to really incorporate her into church life and practice. And so she basically felt like the church is doing nothing for me, so I'm going to leave. And I just asked myself, how many people have left our church because of our own lack of theology? Because we personally didn't feel it was relevant to us, and because we, like I said, we have this kind of universal mindset that the world revolves around us, and that therefore we did not seek out a way to reach out to another person and to evangelize to them. Now, interestingly enough, just a random thought that I had as well, Ebony's vlog was called Fear Not. And I was kind of reflecting on this in terms of evangelism. Now, it's interesting because in the Bible, when the angels came, they always said, the very first thing that came out of their mouth, fear not. And you might wonder why. Because an angel is basically the closest thing to God incarnate that you're ever going to get in your life. I mean, I don't think many people have experienced angels, at least in our Western society, and those who have experienced angels are probably afraid to talk about it because it just sounds so strange, and people would probably argue with you, you know, did that really happen? And, you know, are you just making that up to get attention or whatever? But it's very interesting that the angels did say, fear not. And I think that that message of fear not is one that we often forget when we're evangelizing, because we just assume either that evangelism is not important, so we're not going to do it at all, or that, of course, people want to hear the good news of the gospel, and of course they want to come into the church. Coming into the church is a very, very scary thing if you've never been involved, or if you have been involved and you've been really hurt in one way or another. So I think that the key to our evangelism is, number one, first of all, we got to do it. We can't make excuses. We can't talk about relativism. We just have to say there's one truth and that's the only truth. But second of all, we need to find ways to not only verbally tell people, fear not, but to actually take that time to engage in their fear, to recognize their fear, to affirm that fear in terms of, I understand why you would be afraid, but also showing them that there really is no reason to be afraid, because we are not going to hurt them, because we are going to be the body of Christ. And I'd love to continue that conversation with you further and hear what you guys have to say. Talk to you later. Bye.